All right, Akim. Shalom, shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Makakwadash, that honors the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone of Deep His Truth. Salutations to the sincere Akim and Aqua that may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Requai, and back here with another quick and Lord's will, as always, an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I'm just going to be talking about, I'm going to be reacting to this video that I saw on TikTok and kind of put in my 2 cents on it. And, Lord's will, as always, this will be an edifying lesson. So without further ado, I'm going to play the clip, right? So here it is.
Black Project 2025. Hear me out. I know it sounds crazy, but this is my vision. What if all of us were to get into a group? Okay, I'm talking doctors, lawyers, engineers. There's so many of us that are so talented, and we were to work together with our own Black agenda for 2025. I'm talking opening up Black-owned grocery stores in certain cities, Black-owned banks, so that way we can actually get our home loans and do what we need to do, our own doctor's offices, our own law practices, and we really were to just congregate and push towards our goals and our outcomes, right? And
Right. So this is, this one young woman, Israelite woman, sharing her vision in regards to Black Project, so-called Black Project 2025, where essentially it's an initiative kind of like other past initiatives. For example, you had Black Wall Street, where you had different Israelites, they had different, what's it called? Different establishments, and it was okay. You may have your pharmacy, you had your grocery store, you had your postal service, you had your winery business, whatever it was, and then you're all kind of pulling together and actually, working together as a unit, right? So, it personally speaking, it does sound like a good initiative, but Jake doesn't understand, and this is why it's not going to work, because Jake doesn't understand a few things. They don't understand, number one, that you need Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. That's what you really, really need. That's who you need, I should say, right? And then you don't know that because and then you don't understand that the Lord put a series of curses on us, right? And so let me start with that actually. Let's go to okay, so this is Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. And it says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord Yahweh, thy power to observe to do all his commandments and statutes, that I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." Right? So it just goes, as a matter of fact, let me jump around because there was another point that she made as well. I want to jump down to verse 48, and it says, "Therefore thou shalt serve thy enemies, where the Lord Yahweh shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in the want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee." Right? So this goes to show that the Lord put a series of different curses upon our people. And our people don't seem to understand that because they're still engulfed in gross darkness. Or they either even, or another thing is that they know about it, but they refuse to actually hearken onto the actual message because they're stubborn, right? So, our people don't understand that, okay, and then part of those curses, we would have to go to these other nations for these different things. So, for example, you have to go to these other nations for your gas. You have to go to these other nations for your, and things that pertain to your vehicle, education, understanding in your so-called religion, and so on and so forth. You would have to go to them for everything, your tangible goods, as well as, your services, your products, everything. Here and there you have a sprinkling of, of our own people having their own initiatives, for example, but that is not the majority. That is not you Israelites, you don't own the infrastructure to actually manufacture a lot of these things. You still have somebody like, for example, Esau or Elam or Ishmael might run, like, for example, like the convenience stores in your neighborhoods, and you don't seem to understand that you still have to go to them for everything because we sinned against the Lord Yahweh Bashal Shai, right? We forgot, we disregarded his ways. The scriptures say that his ways are higher than our ways, right? And if you read, as a matter of fact, let me read it, because Deuteronomy 28 verse 1 is a complete flip, right? And it says, and it shall come to pass, if thou hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord Yahweh thy power, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy power will set thee above all nations of the earth, right? So these are the series of blessings from verse 1 all the way down to verse 14, right? Verse 15, this is when we realize, like, oh man, the Lord really, really messed us up, because we disregarded the ways of your Heavenly Father, right? So that's one thing I wanted to bring out. Let me continue.
This is how I envision it going. We can all get into this group. We can all donate what we have to donate on a monthly basis. And then basically we can have a CEO, we can have a CMO, and we can have a CFO that's in charge of leading the groups with the initiatives, right? We could have bi-weekly, monthly calls in regards to where we stand with our goals. So, okay, guys, we want a Black-owned grocery store in Los Angeles built and developed, August 2025. This is where we stand. This is how much we have funded. This is what's needed. This is where we are in the process, and we just go from there. And so we can just kind of congregate, and then on top of that, in this group,
right? So so here she's actually breaking down the idea for the project of how things should run, how things should essentially should be established and flow. But Jake, man, Jake essentially Jake lacks a lot of things. Jake, and she has a point in the sense of our people being talented. Like our people are very, very talented. I'm not disregarding that. They're very skilled. Engineers. A lot of Jake's inventions and establishments, are poorly recognized in this society, right? So, but the thing is, Jake lacks the true definition of love, right? So I just want to make that quick point, and that's going to segue into the next point I want to bring out. So this is First John chapter 5 verse 2, and it points in 3, and it says, for this we know that we love the children of the Most High, when we love the Most High and keep his commandments. Verse 3, for this is the love of the Most High, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous, right? So this is how we show love, right? And then it trickles down, because as a matter of fact, where is it? I think it's Matthew 22. Hold on, just bear with me on this, brothers. Right. This is Matthew chapter 22. I'll start at verse 36, and it says, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yahushua said unto him, to love the Lord thy power with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets. So this is what Yahushua is actually, explaining, like, these two particular things, encapsulate, the mass majority of the laws, because we understand that we can't keep all the laws 100% in this society. But the point is, Jake lacks these fundamental two things, right? We don't we don't love, our people don't love the Lord, right? And they say that they do, but it's mostly lip service, right? And they don't care about their own kin, right? And you see that, and then because they don't care about their own kin, they don't care about their own brethren, that's going to trickle down into business. They can't even show that. If they can't even show that amongst themselves and amongst their own, for example, their parents or their brothers, their sisters, and so on and so forth, how are you going to be able to manage and conduct yourself actually running a business? Because in your business, your mindset is to actually work with people of your own kin, and our people lack those fundamental two things, right? Those two principal commandments that Yahushua is talking about. So how can you actually function and run a business when you lack these two things? I hope you brothers understand what it is I'm saying. This is working, trying to manifest this practically. Our people lack these particular things because they don't have a love towards the Lord, really, when you really, really boil down to the thing. So I'll read that last one again. This is verse 14. It says, on these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets, right? So how shall I really, he took the heavy burden, for us, right? And these two things is how, amongst our brethren, amongst our own, essentially our own, the brethren in the faith, this is how we show love towards one another, right? By exemplifying Yahushua, pretty much, right? But our people lack that standard. They don't actually implement this, towards one another, because they don't actually love Yahweh Shai, right? And that trickled down, and then when you're doing that as a business, that's going to trickle down into the way you treat each other in that business. Because Jake is they're very Jake can be very, very wicked when it comes to doing business, in especially in Babylon, right? Because we're surrounded by heathens and the Lord put that curse, right? We'll have an evil eye towards each other. Jake doesn't understand how to actually relate and actually, work with their own kin, So, as I'm reading, I just want to get an example of that, an example of Jake's wickedness towards their own. Just bear with me on this. This is important, because I know our people, they want to get into these things, but they're missing proper foundation, right? And this is not something they haven't done before. This has been done many different times. But so before I ramble on, let me just make this point. So this is the book of Nehemiah, chapter 5, and I'm just going to read down, right? Okay, so I'll just start at verse 1, and it says, and about this time, some of the men and their wives raised a cry of protest against their fellow Jews. They were saying, we have large families, we need more food to survive. Others said, we have mortgaged our fields, vineyards, and homes to get food during the famine. Others have said, we have had to borrow money on our fields and vineyards to pay our taxes. We belong to the same family of those who were wealthy, and our children are like theirs. Yet we must sell our children into slavery just to get enough money to live. We have some sold. Excuse me, let me read that again. We have already sold some of our daughters, and we were helpless to do anything about it, for our fields and vineyards are already mortgaged to others, right? So here you had essentially more there were Israelites that were a bit more well off, and then you had Israelites that were a bit more impoverished. And the ones that were being more impoverished, they essentially had a lot of heavy burdens on them, financial burdens on them, right? So, continuing on, it says, verse 6, when I heard their complaints, I was very angry. I'm reading in the NLT, by the way. And it says, after thinking it over, I spoke against these nobles and officials and told them, you are hurting your own relatives by charging interest when they borrow money. Then I called a public meeting to deal with the problem. At the meeting, I said unto them, we are doing all we can to redeem our relatives. It says Jewish, but I don't like to say that word. And it says, who have had to sell themselves to pagan foreigners, but you are selling them back into slavery again. How often must we redeem them? And they had nothing to say in their defense. So you see the kind of wickedness that was going on amongst our own people, right? And this is during that time of that rebuilding of the walls, right? And our people essentially began to take on wicked practices such as usury, and they were putting those burdens upon their own people, right? So I'm going to continue on and read it a little bit more, and it says, and then I pressed further, verse 9, then I pressed further, what you're doing is not right. Should you not walk in the fear of our power, Yahweh, in order to avoid being mocked by enemy nations? I myself, as my brothers and my workers, have been lending the people money and grain, but now let us stop this business of charging interest. And that's something we're not supposed to do, right? You see, this is the kind of wickedness that you see amongst our own people. That's the point. You must restore their fields and vineyards, olive groves, and homes to them this very day, and repay the interest you charge when you lent them money, grain, new wine, and olive oil, right? So, they were in a position where they were borrowing money, but Jake was being wicked with it, because they were also charging interest. I believe that's Exodus 23. Just bear with me. Let me see if I could find it. Or is it 22? Okay, Exodus 22 and 25, and it says, if thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury, right? So we're not supposed to essentially, charge interest, upon, like, say, for example, you borrow money, from someone else, and then they put, for example, like 5% interest on stuff like that. That's usury, right? We're not supposed to do that to our own people. But then you had an example of our own people, doing this to their own kinsmen, right? So, Nehemiah essentially had to step in and, had to actually remind them, like, yo, we're not supposed to, they didn't have, essentially when he checked them and he rebuked them, they had nothing to say, right? So you see how this can also trickle down into business. Because, for example, if you have, for example, your own kin, maybe one of them owns a bank, because we don't actually apply the mentality and the fear of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, that man is not going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Is not going to implement practices that are contrary to the ways and contrary to the scriptures. This is why I wanted to make that first point. Our people don't actually have that love towards the Heavenly Father and His Son, right? Because they don't actually implement those practices. And a lot of our people are very shady and very immoral when it comes to dealing with each other. That's why we can't deal with each other as a people when you think about it practically. They're missing these core ingredients, and they're missing that cornerstone. They're missing Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, you know. So that's really the point I kind of wanted to hit, just to show the shadiness and the griminess of our people, because our people are really supposed to be the people that's supposed to set the trend in righteousness, but essentially they set that trend, they set a trend in wickedness. Let me get what's that? Jeremiah 5. Jeremiah 5:26, and it says, "For among my people are found wicked men. They lay wait, and as he setteth snares, they set a trap, they catch men. As a cage full of birds, so are their houses full of deceit. Therefore they are become great and waxen rich." Right. So it shows the wickedness of our own people, especially the ones that are a bit more well off and more lofty. And then that could trickle down today, for example, your modern day pastors and so on and so forth. They see the afflicted. They see essentially their own kin being afflicted, but they actually don't actually hold and actually maintain that healthy fear of the Lord, right? When dealing with our own people, and essentially there are moments where they would continue to take advantage of our own people, especially in the Catholic Church. That's very, very well known. But I'm not really speaking much about the church per se, but this can also trickle down into business, because our people they lack these particular things, right? Okay, I guess I'll end off with this one. I had a couple more, but I didn't want to make the lesson too long. I didn't even get through the video per se. I can always just attach it in the description below. Let's just bear with me on this. Just a quick side note as well. Earlier within the book of Nehemiah actually explains that he was a cupbearer, and somebody who is a cupbearer, has to be very, very trustworthy. Has to have a lot of morals and a lot of character. And these are, our people are very unscrupulous, so they miss these fundamentals, right? It's yes, it's good if we want our people to prosper, but that you can't do that when you don't hearken unto your power. Like it says in Haggai, consider your ways. Our people haven't considered their ways and don't want to look at themselves and actually try to kind of get, basically get themselves in order, right? When, they want to go out and, like I remember years ago, for example, when they had the BLM protest, and this nigga died, George Floyd. A lot of, you had a lot of protests within those so-called black communities. And what happened was they ended up wrecking a lot of the businesses that were essentially so-called black owned, right? So it shows the shame essentially of our nation, because, they behaved, a lot of them could have been also, agents as well. But the point really is they don't know how to take care of their own surroundings. You're kind of just a wild bull in a net, right? And because you can't do that, how can you manage a lot of these big things, right? Wisdom of Solomon 6, verse 21, and it says, if your delight be then in thrones and in scepters, O ye kings of the people, honor wisdom, that ye may reign forevermore, right? And it shows you the importance of wisdom, right? Scriptures say that wisdom is the principal thing. The principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all that get understanding, right? So this is the principal thing that our people need to essentially hearken onto. But a lot of our people won't hearken onto these things. So, anyways, okay, I'll read verse 24. This is a good point too, and it says, "But the multitude of the wise is in the welfare of the world, and a wise king is upholding of the people," right? So even though, like, let's take this mindset, what she has, even a step further, right, to maintaining the welfare of the world, right? So, for example, if you have a business, you know, and another, and then you have, for example, like you have textiles, you understand honoring wisdom. For example, you're not going to make for example, clothing garments that have, for example, mixed fabrics. You're not going to do that because we're actually implementing the laws, and actually practicing them, and this is where wisdom is, right? But for example, in this society, if say for example they were to do this on a very very micro scale, right? Jake maybe might be selling hoodies, and then the hoodies are essentially kind of mixed fabrics. Like, this is the point of actually implementing wisdom and actually implementing these laws in righteousness, and have even been in a righteous kingdom, right? Because we know we're not living in a righteous kingdom, right? But that's, I'm just using that as a small example. Somebody, you have your hoodies, and then the fabrics that you use, you're not going to mix the fabrics, right? But anyways, I kind of just want to make that point too, because this is how the wisdom that the Lord gave us, through these law, statutes, and commandments, is how we maintain the welfare of the world, right? So, anyways, I'll leave it there. I rambled on quite a bit, but I sincerely pray that this was edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Shai. Until next time, I say Shalom.